they keep changing. Okay, now I got that memo after I went to it. Okay. Every semester they keep changing all these things and not letting anybody know about it. Okay, we talk about that. Now, as you know, we have so many different types of energy: kinetic energy, potential energy, and so on and so forth. We don't deal with any of one of those. Our job in this course to basically do a power plant design. And a power plant design doesn't work with those issues, at least for this course. So we're not going to deal with that part of it. Let me see what else I have. Now, substances or material that we're going to use, it comes in three different phases. They can be solid, they can be gas, or they can be liquid. We don't use solid in this course, but we use gas like air, that would be chapter 9. And also we use water, which is chapter 10, to generate power. So these are the phases of the substance. Now, the air that we use is called air standard. Or a standard air. Since this is French, they call it air standard. Now, we consider air as an ideal gas. In reality, air is not ideal gas. Air is basically real gas. Real gas has totally different properties than ideal gas. However, for our practical purposes for our work, the number one assumption we have that air that we're going to use at all times is going to be ideal gas, nothing else. Therefore, all ideal gas equations going to apply. What's the first one? PV is equal to nRT. So this is always going to work. Now, I need to come back here because I want to show you something different. Now, please pay attention to this. We have volume that we show it as big V. Then if I divide that volume by unit mass, I will get small volume. This is called specific volume.
Professor?
Yes.
The camera's not focusing. It's hard to tell what you're writing on the board, and it looks like it just focused now.
I cannot hear you. What was it?
The camera was unfocused and it's fuzzy, but it looks like it fixed itself and it's focused now.
Camera was...
It was unfocused, so really fuzzy. It's kind of doing that again.
Yeah.
Okay, is it better now?
No, it's no, it's not.
Is it blurry?
Yes, very blurry.
Oh. That is kind of weird. Let me see if I can use my computer camera. How is it now?
Good.
Looks very good.
whoops. This is a camera that I had purchased, supposed to be high definition, but apparently it's just following me rather than staying focused. It's not supposed to do that. So is it better now?
Yep, it's much better. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is volume, this is a specific volume. So if I look at this equation, if I divide both sides per unit mass, what do I get? PV is equal to RT. Pressure and temperature, they don't deal with mass. Of course, R is a universal gas constant, has nothing to do with mass. Therefore, this is the equation we're going to use a lot. Between 2 points, we use P1, V1 over T1 is equal to P2, V2 over T2 equal to P3, V3 over T3, and so on. So remember all of this because it comes very handy as we move forward. Now, if I divide the volume by mass flow rate, mass flow rate is a mass per unit time. Anything that has a dot on it has a unit time involved, meaning this mass is flowing between 10 seconds, 10 hours, or whatever the unit time we use. In this case, I'm sorry, not that. If I use the volume that has unit mass involved, because becomes V dot. This means volume rate. That is rate of the volume within an hour, within a minute, within a second, that volume changes. We use this concept specifically of air conditioning system. How many times we have to change the air in the classroom to make all the students comfortable. That's the volume rate. Now we have Q, and it's called total heat. Then if I divide this Q by unit mass, I will get small q. And we use this a lot. If the Q has a dot on it, that becomes heat rate. Now, W is work. By divided by unit mass, I get small w. And of course, if W has a dot on it, we call that power. That's what this course is all about, power plant. So when we say this power plant generating 10 megawatt, that means 10 megawatt every hour. Or 1 gigawatt means 1 gigawatt per hour. That's how we determine that. That's so far on this one. Then we have H, that is called enthalpy. Does anybody know the definition of enthalpy? Now, enthalpy, enthalpy is available energy in a substance. That's why we use enthalpy to generate power. So available energy in a substance, we call it enthalpy. You know that there is no 100% on anything. So if we have a substance, we cannot get 100% of its energy. That's impossible. So there is something that we cannot touch. We'll talk about that later. However, we never use this. We always divide that by unit mass, and we call it small h. This is what we're going to use throughout this course. The other one is entropy. Entropy, it's the unavailable energy within a substance. So when we have enthalpy, we take all the energy we need, and then when it comes to entropy, that's something that we cannot touch. We cannot get it. That is unavailable energy in a substance. That is energy available in a substance.
Professor?
Again, by that, by unit mass, and we get smallest. That's what we're going to use throughout this course. Finally, we have internal energy. This is the amount of energy internally within that substance. However, we don't use big U. We divide that by unit mass, and we get small u. This is what we use in our courses. These are the new thermodynamic parameters: enthalpy, entropy, and internal energy.
Professor, I had a question.
Yes.
Could you give an example? You explained entropy as the unavailable energy in a substance. What would be an example of that unavailable energy?
We get to that as we go through the course. These are all chapter 1 through 8. You should know all of this. When we start our course, you want to see all kind of examples. I don't want to go back, teach chapter 1 through 8. That's not the concept. I'm just giving you some highlights so you know what's happening and you know what to expect. All the examples you're going to see when we start chapter 9. Now, there is another thing I want to discuss that we're going to use a lot. And that is called specific heat at constant pressure. We also have specific heat at constant volume. Now, please understand the specific heat are function of time and temperature. So that means Cp is a function of temperature and time. So as Cv. In real life, these two will never, ever be constant. However, you'll see in chapter 9, sometimes we make assumptions that these are remain constant. That means they do not vary with the temperature. No matter what we do to the temperature, how much we increase it or decrease it, the value of these stays the same. If we make that assumptions, the value of Cp and Cv are on the table, air table, and then of your chapter, as we go through it, you will see all. I want you to pay attention. As you know, Cp minus Cv will give you universal gas constant. And Cp over Cv will give you the K value that you're going to see in some of the equations. Again, all of these you should already know because it was part of a thermodynamic one. Okay. Okay. Now, units. This is the last part I'm going to cover, then we're going to move on to chapter 9. Okay. Now, volume, which is total volume, is a cubic meter or cubic feet. Small volume per unit mass, it's a meter cubic per kilogram or cubic feet per pound mass. Pressure, it's kilopascal. This is what we use, but in reality is Newton, which is Newton per, meter squared becomes kilopascal. We use kilopascal. Here we use pound force. Temperature, degrees Celsius plus 273 to make it degree Kelvin. This one is degree Fahrenheit plus 460 to make it degree Rankine. Now, all the energy value has the same unit. For instance, work is energy, so that's kilojoule. Here is BTU. If I use a small w, this becomes kilojoule per kilogram because the unit mass. This would be BTU per pound mass. Q, again, same thing. Kilojoule and BTU. Small q would be kilojoule per kilogram, BTU per pound mass. We don't use big H, so we use small. That would be kilojoule per kilogram, BTU per pound mass. We use U, internal energy, small u, again, kilojoule per kilogram, BTU per pound mass. Entropy, small entropy, has a kilojoule per kilogram degree Kelvin. This one is BTU per pound mass degree Rankine. These are the units. Now, if you have big Q dot, this will be kilojoule per second. We call that kilowatt. If you have W dot, again, would be kilojoule per second, which is kilowatt. If you have V dot, that would be cubic meter per second. That would be the W dot. And a mass dot, which is a mass flow rate, is going to be kilogram per second. These are all SI units. Now, if I want to do English unit, this becomes BTU per second. There is no kilowatt. This becomes BTU per second. Again, there is no kilowatt. This becomes cubic feet per second. This would be pound mass per second. So this is in a nutshell are the things we use in this course. Units, all the things that we use in this course, of course, volume, pressure, temperature, big work with dot on it, small, big Q with dot on it, small q, small h, and these. These are the things we use extensively in this course. Any questions? All right. Since you don't have any questions,
Professor, I do have one question. You said that when we do the conversion, like if we want to get the English units for the,
please, I cannot hear you. Increase your volume. Let me see, maybe I have a problem. Just 1 second.
Professor?
Okay, go ahead again.
For the English units, you said that if we want to change the Okay, when you were going over the units, you said that KW like doesn't like apply to the English units for when it comes to converting from SI to English units. Like for example, where you see the heat equals kilograms over second equals KW. You said the KW goes away or it converts to something else if we want to get in English units.
In English unit, let's say, let me put the English unit in front of it. Maybe you understand it better. This becomes BTU per second. There is no kilowatt in English unit because kilowatt belongs to SI unit.
Okay.
If I want to come up with kilowatt, I need to use a conversion factor, convert this to kilowatt. If I want to do that, which I told you, do not do that. In a real life, in this country, in a power plant, we generate power based on this. However, when you tell somebody we have a power plant that it uses 45 million BTU per second, everybody's lost. So what we do, we convert that to kilowatt and megawatt, and we use that one, even though it's the whole thing is English unit. In the last second, we convert it to kilowatt. But in real life, for your course, in this case, this would be BTU per second. This would be cubic feet per second. Pound mass per second. This would be English unit corresponding to this. I don't want you to go through the conversion.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. That's what I'm here for. All right, that take care of chapter 8 review. We have a little time. I want to start chapter 9. And that's the course that we need to start. Now, one thing I need you to do me a favor. Please keep your textbook handy. You cannot survive this course without having your textbook next to you. Because everything that we're going to do, we need to go back and forth between the tables that they are in your textbook. And if you don't learn how to read those tables, you're going to be in big trouble. So please make sure have your textbook next to you. So when I solve examples and we tell you that, for instance, the enthalpy at this temperature is equal to that, you can go and look at it and see it where I found that number. All right? Okay. Now, chapter 9. Chapter 9 is called gas power cycle. Do you guys know the definition of a cycle? You should know that. That's, I guess it's chapter 7 or 8, something like that. The cycle is you start from one point and you go wherever you want to go and you end up with the starting point. That is a cycle. If you start a process and go through the process, come back to your original point, that is called cycle. You should know the process. Between 2 points, 1, let's say 2. If I go from point 1 to 2, this is called process. Again, all of these are in chapter 1 through 8. So if I'm standing here and I walk and I'm stopped here, that was a process going from my initial point to this point. if I go back to the where I started, no matter how I go back there, that is completing the cycle. I started, I went to another point, maybe another point, and came back to where I started. That's the cycle. So I hope you remember all of those. So now we have a gas power cycle. In a gas power cycle, the working fluid is air, what we call it air standard. So our working fluid is air. What does it mean? That means we use air to generate power. And you will see how we're going to do that. In order to do that, there are two ways that we can accomplish that. One, let's see, this is combustion chamber. So if I introduce air, and here I introduce fuel. Fuel can be gasoline, diesel, anything, any kind of a fuel you can imagine. I will here get combustion products. Now this combustion product has a very, very high temperature and pressure. So when air comes in, let me go back. Look at your car. What is your combustion chamber in your car? It's called fuel injection. You have air coming, you have your gasoline coming, and gasoline get ignited, and what happens? It will generate heat. So that's what we have here. This is the heat that we are generating. Once I generate this heat, I can use that to generate power. What is heat? It's energy. I will convert that to a power. That's how you do it. I grab the air, I add fuel. What is the fuel? Fuel has a chemical energy, right? Then I bring it to combustion chamber, I ignite it with electricity. That's electrical energy. Then I generate heat. That's another form of energy. Then I take that heat, take it to the cylinders in my car, take it to the drive shaft, through the transmission, take it to the axle, to the wheel turning. When the wheel's turning, what is that? It's a work. And then you drive from home to school. So as you can see, I grab the air, I convert the chemical energy with electrical energy to heat and ultimately to work to make my car run from one point to another. That is called gas power cycle. Now, the other way of doing it, this is what we call heat exchanger. The topic of your course after this one, and heat transfer. You get into this very in detail. Now, heat exchanger, I will bring a cold air into it. This device will exchange that heat and come out with a hot air. Same thing that I did here. This concept that we're going to use, it's called thermal process. That's a thermodynamic way. This one is called heat transfer process. I'm transferring the heat between one body to another through this device. It's very similar, doing the same thing with a two separate approach. So our focus is going to be on this part of it. Any questions?
Professor, quick question. In a car, the energy that you want comes from the pressure, right? And the heat's kind of like a byproduct.
No.
Oh, okay.
No. The heat comes from the combustion chamber.
Mm-hmm.
Look at here. When you take the regular air, you increase the temperature. Go back to ideal gas equation. P is equal to PV is equal to RT. This is constant. I can keep this volume constant if I increase temperature. What happened to my pressure?
Increases.
Increase, right here. So this heat first will give me a high temperature, at the same time will give me high pressure.
Got it. Thank you.
No problem. I'm glad you're asking this question. Now, this temperature and pressure will give me that work. Yes, in a sense, you are correct. The pressure becomes important. But before the pressure, I need that heat. I need that temperature. Without that, I got nothing. Once I increase that temperature through the heat, I automatically get the pressure right there. Any other question? Okay. So for entire chapter 9, our working fluid is air. And as I said, the biggest assumption is that we assume air is an ideal gas. So all ideal gas equations apply. If we don't make that assumptions, we got nothing. Now, in order to generate power, a lot of different people came up with a way to do it. The first guy was a French guy. He came with an idea called Carnot cycle. Then a German guy came back, came up with a better idea, Otto cycle. There are a couple of British guys. One was Ericsson and Sterling. Their idea was very similar to autocycle and wasn't that popular. Still, autocycle was better than those two. Then came along a Danish guy named Rudolf Diesel. If you ever travel to Denmark, go to Copenhagen, in 1895, this genius came with an idea and started the diesel cycle. And diesel cycle is one of the most important cycles that we use everywhere. And when we get there, you will see that. Finally, we talk about all other people, we might as well talk about the American guy. The American guy name was Brayton cycle. We call that, whoops, gas turbine. In all of these, diesel cycle are the most efficient way to generate power. Brayton cycle is most efficient way of flying an airplane. So you know those jet engines? When you fly and you see 2 or 4 jet engines on the wings, that's this cycle. It's not efficient to generate power, as you will see as we discuss it later, but it's the most efficient way to fly airplane, fighter jet plane. Those all run with a gas turbine. Now, this one was 100% theory. Has absolutely no practical purposes. However, when you start something, you always start from the basics. You guys don't remember, 1992, we had the first cell phone. I purchased that for $2,500. I was paying $150 per month plus $1.50 for every minute, whether I call somebody or somebody called me. And that cell phone was a brick. It was the size of a brick, as big as that, and heavy. The only way I could carry it, put it in my briefcase. I didn't even give that phone number to my own wife, but I didn't want to pay too much money for it. But that was the beginning. All of a sudden in 1996, we had a little smaller phone. By 1997, we had this flip phone. Everyone was going crazy. Then, of course, Steve Jobs came around and he made an iPhone. The first iPhone wasn't that impressive. The only thing about the first iPhone, you could send a text. Prior to that, phone was just for the phone call. That's it. Today's iPhone 12 or 14 or whatever it is, I'm not an iPhone guy, so I don't know. You have a small computer in your hand. You send text, email, you have 10,000 apps that you can use. I mean, everything is right in front of you in your hand, in the palm of your hand. So we started from something as big of a brick, end up with something so light that we can put in our pocket and has all kind of a capabilities. So when Carnot cycle was started, it was the beginning of the power plant business. He came up with something that it wasn't practical, but is in theory made sense. When Otto came in, he grabbed that idea, made small changes, and make it practical. Now, let's see what Otto cycle did. I'm going to draw something that you're going to see it over and over and over again. This is a compressor. I show it with C. This is where air enters the compressor. What happens when I enter the air to the compressor? I will pressurize the air. When I pressurize it, it comes out, let's say this is 0.1. At 0.2, I get higher temperature and pressure at 0.2. Because here, this device just increased the pressure, automatically increase the temperature. Now I take that to my combustion chamber. The reason I pressurize it, because my combustion will happen more efficiently. The old days, the car didn't have fuel injection. They had carburetors. That's why the old cars were not energy efficient. So here, I introduce fuel to it. By the way, we're not going to discuss what happened in the combustion. This is not part of this course. That's a completely different course, different way of dealing with what is happening on the combustion side. So we don't care, we just show that the went into the combustion chamber with a compressed air. Now I'm coming out at 0.3 with a very, very high temperature and pressure. So I took an ambient temperature. What is ambient temperature? 1 atmosphere, 20 degrees Celsius, or 14.7 psia, and 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Now here, my temperature is like 2000 degrees Fahrenheit, or 1000 degrees Celsius. So I accomplished a lot of heat throughout, going from these three processes to get to that high intensive heat and pressure. So if I come in, I put a device here, let's call it engine. I can put a turbine, I can put an engine, I can put whatever I want. What happened here? I will get the work out of this system. So here, as we do it, This is work out of this system. What did I do here? I put work into the system, right? What happened here? I put heat, Q, into the system. So I put some work in, some heat in, I got work out. Now I gotta come back to point 1 to make my cycle completed. So here, I come back to point 1, but I need to put a device called heat exchanger to take this remaining hot air coming out of that, make it cool enough back to the same temperature and pressure at point 1, so this cycle can work. That is the definition of a cycle. Regardless of a Carnot cycle or diesel cycle or whatever cycle. I started at point 1, I end up in the same place. So what is happening here? I am taking all the balanced heat that I could not use all of them for the work out of the system. It's called Q out. Now I have 4 kinds of energy. 2 types of energy got into the system, 2 types got out of the system. What is the first law of thermodynamics? What goes in has to come out. So the first law of thermodynamics tells me that work in plus Q in has to be equal to work out plus Q out. Summation of all energy going in has to be equal to summation of all energy going out. First law of thermodynamics. As you can see, none of the energy disappeared going anywhere. It just kept converting from one form to another form to give me this guy so I can drive my car. Or I can generate electricity, turn the lights on in my office, or your home, or run your refrigerator. That's the entire concept of cycle. Any questions? Of course, we're going to talk about more details of how we're going to calculate various energy in this cycle and so on and so forth. But I wanted to just get you exposed to what is happening as far as cycle concerned.
Professor, got a quick question.
Sure.
In a car, what is the heat exchanger? Because I can imagine like the engine is like the
Exhaust.
combustion, just exhaust. Like as it
Yes.
exits, it's okay.
What I can do here, I can exhaust this the atmosphere. And that's what we have a problem with greenhouse gas emissions. What is a heat exchanger in airplane? Nothing. Everything comes out of the jet engine. Because I cannot take that to the heat exchanger, bring it up in front of an airplane and feed the turbine. That's impossible. So we let it go.
Got it.
In case of your car, we exhaust. That's why the cars are not efficient. And at the same time, we have a major issue with greenhouse gas emissions, the environmental issues.
Got it. So we need the system, the cycle to reset and pull the heat out, and that exhaust is exchanging the heat out of the engine so that we can reset the system.
If we put it through the heat exchanger, we don't exhaust anything. So we are environmentally more friendly. However, If I have to exhaust, then I keep taking air from outside, ambient temperature. Then there won't be any heat exchange. I still have the Q out. The Q out would be my exhaust.
Got it. Thank you.
Whether I do it through heat exchanger or just exhaust it, doesn't make any difference. The concept remains the same.
Got it. Thanks.
No problem. Any other questions?
So is a car considered a cycle if there is no connection, like start and endpoint connection?
What was it again?
Is a car considered like a cycle, or is it really a
No, it's a
process?
cycle.
Like,
All of those are recycled. Gas turbine in a jet engine, it's a cycle. Instead of connecting it back to this, the airplane keep getting fresh air from the front of the airplane and exhaust the rest of it out. And because of this guy, all the exhaust is the Q that you're sending out. And that's why this equation always remain and you have a cycle. Whether you physically come back to point one or are retarded to come back to point one, makes no difference. You still have a cycle.
And Professor,
Yes.
this cycle would be most similar to the Otto cycle.
The cycle that you see is going to be, you're going to see that in diesel cycle, Otto cycle, Ericsson cycle, Stirling cycle, all of the cycle has the same thing. The only Brayton cycle, the only difference, instead of engine has a turbine. That's it. But the concept of the cycle remains the same no matter what.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. This is called equipment arrangement or equipment layout. This equipment layout remains the same throughout the chapter 9. So the concept of this cycle remains the same. Now, if I want to keep the mass constant through the cycle, I need to connect point 4, I'm sorry. I need to connect point 4 back to point 1 to keep the mass constant. In this case, mass is not constant because I keep getting in from outside and dumping it outside. In reality, still the mass is constant because whatever air that I take here, I dump it outside here. You get my point?
Yes, Professor.
Okay, so that determines your cycle. Now, these were basics of a gas power cycle. Now we're going to focus on Carnot cycle, the theory, for a few minutes because it's not a practical. Then we're going to start the cycles that are very, very important that we're going to get into a heavy. It's Otto cycle, diesel cycle, and Brayton cycle. These are the three most popular ones that we can generate power through it, so we stay focused on those three. But I will talk about Carnot cycle as a theory, how that started, and why it's not practical. You will see it when we talk about it next Monday. Well, thanks for everything. I will see you guys next week.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much,
Professor.
Thank you.
If you guys have
Thank you.
any questions, you want to stay for my office hour, you're more than welcome to do that. I see a few people are still on. Do you guys have any questions?
I do have a question on the Steam tables that I kind of like before I guess we'll be entering those soon. I didn't know if I should ask it now or later. I always had a,
You should wait when we get to chapter 10 on the Steam table.
okay, got it.
I don't want to get you confused.
Okay, that's
I want
fair.
to go through the process step by step. This is much easier, much faster to learn than jumping from one point to another point and creating a confusion.
Okay, great.
Please.
Thank
keep
you very
that-
much then.
Oh, my pleasure. Keep that question when we get to that cycle.
All right. Okay, thank you very much, and I'll see you next week.
No problem.